community and supported us in this remembrance today. I want to recognize them and thank them for their support. The World Trade Center towers in New York City, the Pentagon, a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. It's important to remember, and it's right that we're here today to do just that. To remember the nearly 3,000 lives lost that day. That day we saw the worst and the best of humankind. We saw terrible, terrible acts of terror and hatred by a few, met by countless acts of heroism, care, and compassion. We saw first responders respond to something you can't prepare for, but do it with great skill, great compassion. We remember that day. And while it's important to remember, it's more important to act, to respond. That day and the days that followed, countless acts of kindness, of care took place. And I challenge us all to do that today, whatever that means for you. That's thanking a police officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, great. That's helping a neighbor. That's doing something to make your community a better place. That is fitting and right and a great and appropriate way to remember. I want to ask our police chief, Deb Faulkner, to come up and speak. I want to recognize the fine leadership that Chief Faulkner has provided. And this is an example of it. She a year ago asked us to step up and remember this day as a community and has continued and started this tradition. And I want to ask her to take a minute to speak as well. Thank you.
Good morning. On behalf of the men and women of the Franklin Police Department, I'd like to personally welcome you to this 911 memorial service. We're honored to have you join us as we remember this important day. This is certainly a group of people from Franklin who will never forget. The images of what happened 14 years ago still break our hearts. It's forever ingrained in our minds. And if you doubt that, watch your television stories today. I had it on this morning, and watching those towers fall and seeing the people run through Manhattan, it was as raw as if it happened this morning. We still remember where we were and what we were doing that morning. I don't think there's anybody in here that could say differently. We heard the terrible news about the Twin Towers, about a field in Pennsylvania we'd never heard of, and certainly the Pentagon. The tragic events of this date have changed our lives forever. For those of us in public safety, it drastically changed our professions. The way we go about our jobs every day is totally different than the way it was when I was a young police officer in Nashville. Police officers and firefighters take an oath to protect the public no matter what. Horrific circumstances don't change the game. We respond quickly based on our training and our strong sense of duty. We all saw incredible heroism that day. That's nothing to debate at all. The whole world witnessed it, and what they saw was the American spirit lifting us up and how our faith carried us through the saddest days of our history. We shall never forget. We will keep this day in our memory and our hearts as we carry on. I'd like to introduce our fire chief for the city of Franklin, Rocky Gazarov.
Thank you, Chief Faulkner. On behalf of the men and women of the Franklin Fire Department, we are very honored and humbled to be standing before you today. I'd like to briefly talk about the tolling of the bell. Long before the internet was invented, our telephones or radios were used across our great nation. Fire departments used the telegraph to communicate using special codes to receive fire alarms from those once red boxes that we used to see on the street corner. When a firefighter was killed, or in the language of our military and public safety, fell in the line of duty, the fire alarm office would tap out a special alarm signal. This would be tapped out as 5 measured dashes, then a pause, then 5 measured dashes, then a pause, then 5 measured dashes. This came to be called tolling of the bell and was broadcast over the telegraph fire alarm circuits to all station houses in the community. Heard outside on the streets with the fire department's windows open, the responding echo was similar to that of the fire stations of old, where fire alarm gongs sounded the location of thousands of emergencies throughout the history of our growing country. This was done for the purpose of notification and as a sign of honor and respect for all the firefighters who had made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their communities. Such symbolism has been a timeless, honored fire service tradition and is repeated at each service for a fallen firefighter. Honor Guard, would you please toll the bell?